kit consists of a T-valve, or a T with a valve on it. There's a refrigerant scale, a bottle of refrigerant, and your charging piece. Now, the charging piece, this is actually two pieces. This valve screws onto the can, and if you were charging under 40 grams, you could actually charge it as a gas. But if you're charging over 40 grams, and I am, you screw it onto this base, and now you charge it as a liquid. The reason we do that, if you don't charge it as a liquid, when you charge it as a gas, this can is going to frost. That weight is going to throw off your weight going into your refrigerator. Guys, R600 is more critical on the weight than 134A was. That's why the scales we have are more accurate than the scales you're used to carrying. So this scale is plus or minus half a gram. The old scales, I think, were plus or minus 2. So we need the accuracy. So what we're going to do is get ready to set this up. Give me just 1 second. All right, now, during the first part of the video we shot, I gave you a lot of little admin things or information about R600, pressures that it runs. What I'll also do is we'll go back into that video. These cans, guys, eventually, the idea is you'll buy your R600A at the local supply house. Just about every manufacturer of R600 I looked at, they have about 420 gram, 14 ounce cans. So what you'll have to do, what I can do for you as soon as I actually have a second can we've used on many of our repairs, and it feels like there's just a little in it. So for this video, I want to use a fresh can, but I'll eventually, when this can empties, I'll give you the tear weight of the can. So when you're out on a job and you're going, you can look at it and say, well, I know the can weighs X, which means I've got Y left in here. And we'll put that in that first part of the video for you once we get there. But this is a brand new can, so I'm not going to have to worry about it. Now, what you do, getting set up here. Right now, we need to evacuate our system. I've got my sparkless vacuum pump. I've got my gauges. And I've got my charging system. So we're going to put this here. And we're going to get this all set up and explain what we're doing here. All right. Okay, we all know our yellow line is going to go to our vacuum pump via our micron gauge. So I'm going to go ahead, attach my micron gauge over here. And I know many of you have different setups, how you get this done in the field. Just go with what you have. All right, from there, we're going to come over here. And with the Vulcan lock ring kit, you've got a small hose. Pull the covers off. These covers, they're kind of like the hangers on the back of a manifold set. They're just to keep trash from getting in your hose. So you can pull the covers off. Just put them back on when you're done. You're going to attach this small hose to the very end of the T and screw it on. Now, the lock ring set comes with 2 quick connects. You're going to take this quick connect and attach it to the hose. Then push the button and remove the screw-on part, and you're going to take and attach this to the low side. So it tells you screw it on, not quite snug, push the button, stick it in, and then finish tightening. Guys, after you've done this a time or two, you'll get it to where you only have to go maybe a quarter turn to get it snug down. All right, then you're going to take your blue hose, your low side hose, and attach it to the open spot of the T. Now get your other quick connect, attach it to your high side hose, remove the screw on part, place it on your dryer, the high side access port, push down on the button and plug it in. Then finish snugging it. So now I'm attached all the way back. I'm not through. Now you're going to take your refrigerant can, pull the cap off, and screw the can into the base. First, make sure this is turned off. Now guys, this little knurled knob on here, if you have gorilla strength, use your pinky. This is the only part that really can get damaged. If you over tighten it, you'll strip this knob off because that's a brass stem. So guys, just be careful with it. You don't have to nail it down, just finger tight. All right, take and screw your R600 can. You'll hear a small little sometimes. And then what you do, this is still off. We're gonna just set that on our scale. We're not even measuring yet. Now, we're hooked to high side, low side, all the way back to here and to our vacuum pump and micron gauge. So what we're gonna wanna do here is you're gonna want to open up your gauges, make sure you're turned on here, and you're also going to want to open this T valve. Now, I'm going to give you a quick rundown before I start the noise of the pump. What's going to happen is not only are we going to pull a vacuum on our system, we're going to pull a vacuum on this hose all the way back to the can. Once we're through with our vacuum, it held under 1,000. What we're going to do at that point, once we disconnect the vacuum pump, disconnect our high side, R600 is going to get charged on the low side. We're going to turn our scale on, zero it with this valve in the off position. We're going to pick the can up and open it, and we're going to get refrigerant to come all the way up to that T. We're going to set it back on the scale, and it's roughly going to have somewhere between it says 3 and 10 ounces just about every time I've done it, or correction, 3 and 10 grams. This one usually every time I've done it, I've had 9 to 11 grams have filled the hose. Okay, that's weight is part of our charge. Then when we open this, we're going to fill it up, and then when we're done, when we hit our exact charge, we're going to pick the can up, turn it off, and open the valve up one more time, and we're going to fire the unit up, and it's going to suck the remainder right out of our hoses for us. So you don't lose anything. You actually pull a vacuum back to the can, and you suck it all into the unit. So there's no loss in the customer's home. There's no guesstimation about how much did I lose in my hoses. We're putting the exact charge in, which is what's going to be required with R600A. All right, so we're open. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my micron gauge, and I'm going to turn on my vacuum pump. I'm going to turn on my gauges. My T-piece is open, so I'm sucking back to there. And now I can go ahead and get comfortable. But remember, this is also where I would be taking care of anything else I need to do. If I hadn't put my clips on, which I've still got one to put on, I could actually start taking stuff out of my truck that I'm done with. This dead time during the evacuation process, don't sit back here and twiddle your fingers. Use this to your benefit. A lot of guys say, well, I don't want to take anything out. I might have a leak. if you'd used the nitrogen, you should have already found the leak and fixed it. Right now, I'm just pulling a vacuum. And then I'm going to charge it, then I'm going to leave. All right. All right. I'm going to try not to do too much talking during this portion. In fact, we're going to bring this down. We're already at about 1,250 microns, and it's only been running. I'm just pulling a vacuum. And then I'm going to charge it, then I'm going to leave. All right. All right. I'm going to try not to do too much talking during this portion. In fact, we're going to bring this down. We're already at about 1,250 microns, and it's only been running a couple of minutes. What you're going to find out, and again, guys, if you're not changing your vacuum pump oil at least once a week, if you're doing 2 or more seal systems a week, you should be changing your vacuum pump every week, your oil. If you're not changing your oil, this process right here could take you 2-3 hours. Now, back here, I evaluate units that are brought back in, and many of them have been left open to the atmosphere. Sometimes with those, it does take me 2, 3, 4 hours to get a good vacuum. But usually, we're talking 30 minutes to get a good vacuum, down to 300 microns. I try to go a little below 500 and shut it, make sure it holds under 1,000. That's what we're looking for. But guys, I change my oil every week. So if you're not buying oil to replace your oil and you're complaining about long seal system times, that can be one of the issues. The other problem we've had, some of our GRTs have ridden with many of the techs. They're finding maintenance on the hoses, hose gaskets leaking, hoses leaking, manifold sets leaking. Guys, periodically, check your equipment. You can only get as good a vacuum as your equipment will allow. So change your oil, make sure you got good gauges. If your hoses need gaskets, get them, replace them. Keep your nitrogen stocked on your truck. These are all going to make your job easier, better, and go quicker. All right, we're down to 1,075, so we're just going to do some shortening of the video in just a second, so hold tight. All right. Now, through the magic of being able to compress this, we pulled down to about 340 microns. We're sitting at about 705, been there for about a minute. Let it keep holding. And once we're good, we're going to go ahead and shut down, and we're going to close this valve. So I've kept my vacuum all the way to here. I've closed my gauges. I'm going to turn that off, turn my micron gauge off, and my vacuum is held to here. Now, what we're going to want to do is, one, I need to untie from here so I can move a little bit easier. Now, guys, if you've watched any of our training, you know that this is not a linear compressor. This is actually a BLDC compressor. But the unit's been down. It's going to be 24 hours before your pressures are right. You don't need in on the high side. So the nice thing about these quick connects, just make sure your gauges are off, your T-piece is shut, push the button and pull. I didn't lose my vacuum. There was no shh. So go ahead and disconnect your high side and cap it up, because we're done with the high side. And put my quick connect back up, and I can connect this hose up. Now, if you were to leave your high side on, here's what's going to happen to you. For it to measure pressure, refrigerant's going to have to go fill this line up, and you've got a critical charge. So when you're done, if you can't get the refrigerant in this hose back in the refrigerator, you've just left it undercharged, and R600 is critical. So we don't need in there. The high side pressure is not going to tell you anything for the first 24 hours that's remotely interesting. So disconnect. Now I'm still connected to my low side. I have a vacuum all the way back to here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take and turn on my scale. It's going to give you all kind of numbers, blah, 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 blah. Then it will go to 0. Then you're going to hit the 0 and the tare button. It's going to give me 0.0. Now always make sure you're set to grams. This unit, I checked the data plate, it needs 52 grams of refrigerant. Now, it's zeroed. I'm going to pick up the bottle and I'm going to open my refrigerant. And then I'm going to set it right back down on the bottle, on the scale. And today it took 13 ounces. Or correction, 13 grams. Guys, I'm sorry, I've worked in ounces for 30 years, but 13 grams. So the way this procedure works is you're going to open this T valve and allow about half your charge into the refrigerator. So 26. So I'm going to open up and watch my scale. And I wound up with 30. So you don't want to go way much, but you want about half your charge in there. Now, once you've allowed it to go in, now what you're wanting to do is plug your refrigerator in. So if you remember, my refrigerator was plugged into a grounding strap. So I'm going to unplug it from the grounding strap and I'm going to plug it in. Now, this particular refrigerator, its startup sequence is a little different, so we're not worried about that. I've just got to wait for it to come on. My experience with this refrigerator, it takes about 2 minutes for the boot up procedure. So we're going to sit here and wait for the unit to come on. And Madison will shorten this down. All right, we're still waiting for the compressor to come on. But what I did do is we unmuted the sensor, the leak detector, because I wanted you to see what you'd be hearing the entire time. Now, also I wanted you to see that while we're working this and I disconnect, that we're not losing any gas. So I went ahead and put the noise, the audio back into it so you could hear it. And remember, R600A, like that little fire we showed you earlier, once it hits the ground, it starts spreading out. So by having your probe right beneath where I'm working with the gases, that's why it's there. All right, our compressor just fired up and you can see we've already pulled down into a vacuum. Now, my scale is showing 35.5. Now guys, this is where you've got to play with this little valve because I've got to end this at 52 grams. So what you want to do is during this next part, just a quick on and off gave me 4.5 grams. That time I got 2.5. 2. So you've got to sit here and play with it until you learn where you're going to stop. I'm at 48.5. And remember, I need 52 grams. 49. 51. 51.5. 52, 52. All right, now 52. What you want to do is, with this valve off, you're going to pick this up and turn your refrigerant off. Now remember, you pre-charged this line and we had 13 grams. That pre-charge into the lines has got to get in the refrigerator. So now I'm going to open up and just bump the rest of it in. Go ahead and open it. Now you want to watch your gauge. Once this pulls down to as low as it'll go, which is probably going to be around 10 to 13 inches of vacuum, maybe even a little more, you let it get down there, then you're going to disconnect your refrigerant. Now you notice I disconnected and that meter's not screaming at me. If this would have been without the use of the quick connect, y'all all know that had been and we would have gotten probably a scream would have gone off because we would have had refrigerant falling. So I wanted to show you, and that's why I brought the noise back on, the audio, that by doing this and following the proper service procedures, you're not letting R600A isobutane fall into the customer's home where there's a potential arc source. At this point I can disconnect my tools and equipment. The unit is running. I can turn my scale off. That's off. And that's where I just disconnected the bottle. Move it away from the area, let it go back. And that's what I got. When I disconnected my bottle, evidently I didn't hear it, but evidently there was just enough whiff there. And that's why you leave your meter going while you're doing this repair. But I'm back into a safe zone. Everything is back to normal. Close up. All your equipment fits back in here that you used for charging. This closes down. Now, I've still got to put my board back cover on. Take, and just like on any other refrigerator, you want to bend your process tube up to where this unit doesn't have a back panel, it's open, but you still don't want it to stick out. Now, last thing, take a quick check around and make sure, now that the unit's charged, I'd check your lock rings again. Now, of course, this is going to be under a vacuum, so on the process tube and the suction side, you're not going to find anything. But we have no leak. So, servicing an R600A refrigerator seems like a lot of little steps, but really, it's kind of like doing any other refrigerator. Once you learn the steps, it's no big deal. Safety.